All right, y'all, you're Locked On Falcons. I'm your host, Aaron Freeman, and today I am joined by Jarvis Davis, one of the co-hosts of the ATL Day Ones podcast on the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast feed. And today we're talking all about the Falcons preseason opener against the Detroit Lions, talking about who we're going to be focused on, who can win some competitions, and which rookies to watch.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, guys, you know me. I'm Aaron Freeman, been covering the Falcons for many years, formerly at FalcFans.com, RIP, still going strong on Twitter at FalcFans, and of course, the host of this illustrious Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family, your team every day. And we thank everyone that makes Locked On Falcons their first listen each and every day. Of course, Locked On Falcons is free and available Monday through Friday on a variety of podcast platforms, including Apple, Odyssey, Google, and Spotify. And of course, you can also check out Locked On Falcons on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Falcons on YouTube. Hit that bell, give us a like, and you will get the video version of the podcast the night before the audio drops. So I am here once again, joined by Jarvis Davis, one of the co-hosts of the ATL Day Ones podcast, with the lovely Tanitra Batiste on the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast feed. You hear Jarvis every day talking about all the local teams, but I think Jarvis secretly loves talking about this Atlanta Falcons team, and we're going to be talking about in terms of what they do on Friday night in their preseason opener against the Detroit Lions. And so, Jarvis, let's jump right into it. Preseason's all about getting your first look at some of these unproven players. Sort of what players, or what position group are you going to be focused on when you watch the Falcons tee it off against the Detroit Lions?
You know what, man? To be honest with you, I have to, since I'm a former defensive guy, I have to go with the defensive line guys, the slash outside linebackers, edge rushers, whatever you want to call it. I got to watch those guys first because, this is something that we've talked about for years as to what the Falcons need, right? They need to be able to rush the passer. We've talked about that for so long. And I think it's kind of ironic that, you have an offensive minded head coach. And I think this is the year that they probably have the best chance of actually getting to the quarterback, right? Because, with Dan Quinn, being a defense coordinator coming from Seattle, they had literally one guy who could rush the passer for 1 year. And it's just been kind of hit or miss ever since. So I think that, when you think about the way this team was not able to do those things last year, this is the year that I feel that they have the best opportunity because they have it's a numbers game, right? Like there are multiple guys that we are, looking or expecting to be able to get to the quarterback this year, and those are the guys I'm going to have my eye on for sure to start this thing off.
Okay, Jarvis. Well, the correct answer was the offensive line, but we'll let you slide
Yes.
since you're a
That's
defensive
fair.
lineman.
That's fair.
But no, I think you bring up a great point. I think we know Grady Jarrett's good, and
Right.
then we don't really know about the rest of this defensive line. And I think we have expectations with guys like Arnold Ebiketie and Lorenzo Carter being able to provide that pressure off the edge. Eddie Ogundeji being in his second year. But we don't really know who's going to be that second guy on the interior alongside Grady Jarrett. We thought it was going to be Eddie Goldman. Then that went away after a week and a half.
Yeah.
So
I don't want
I
to play
think
football anymore. How about that? Let me sign for $1 million and then, I don't want to play anymore. Okay.
I don't think Eddie wanted to sweat in that Georgia heat. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't either. So
I don't blame him, bro.
I might do it for $1 million, but but
Yeah, I will do it for me.
yeah, but I think you're right. The defensive line is going to be an interesting unit to watch. For me, as I said, as I joked earlier, the offensive line is going to be one of those units because I kind of feel like the Falcons will go as far, at least offensively, as their offensive line is going to carry them. Similar, I think you can make the argument the defense will go as far as the pass rush will be able to carry them. The old cliche adage is, you win and lose the game in the trenches, and I think that will be true for the Falcons once again this year. So, talking about the offensive line for a second, you know, of these three positions up for grab, left guard, center, and right tackle, which position are you going to be most focused on in Friday night?
It has to be center, hands down. I don't think there's any other position to keep an eye on, right? Because, as much as Caleb McGarry has been criticized since he's been here, I think he's at least established himself as the starter for right now for at that right tackle spot. Barring any injury, I think he will be the starter. I don't think there's much of a competition right there going on. And as far as the left guard spots goes, Elijah Wilkinson has been essentially penciled in as the starter ever since the second day of training camp. So I think that, Jalen Mayfield, you know, is dealt with some injuries, but we got a really good idea of how well he can play last year. And I think that pretty much anything would be an upgrade from the way he played last year. So I think that Arthur Smith and company aren't really interested in how much he can develop. I don't believe, and I think that they're not really into doing a whole developmental type situation at that left guard position because, like you said, it is vital for those guys if they're going to do anything this year. That offensive line has to improve from what it did last year. Like because last year is unacceptable. That can't happen again. So in order for that not to happen again, the left guard position has to be uh, a name that it wasn't last year. So it can't be Jalen Mayfield. So for all that being said, that is the reason why I have to keep my eye close, very close on Drew Dahlman and Matt Hennessy and what they do, even though I believe they're the same guy. They literally are the Spider-Man meme that will point at each other like, yeah,
Mhm.
he's the same dude. Hey man, you look just like me. Yeah, I look just like you too. So but that's the thing I'm gonna have my eye on because this is, we're going into, like I said, the first week of the preseason, right? And they only played 3 preseason games this year, for those who don't know. I don't know if I hurt y'all feelings or not, but they only played 3 preseason games because they added another regular season game. So I think that kind of concerns me because when you think about just listening to listen to some players after practice and just kind of putting two and two together. Marcus Mariota talked about how those guys have been interchangeable. Elijah Wilkinson talked about how most of the time you don't switch out the center position like that, and I think that's a little bit concerning to me because neither one of those guys has really establish themselves as the starter, right? Because we're two and a half, almost 3 weeks in to training camp, and I think that's a problem. That's the issue. So, all eyes will be on those guys come Friday night because like one of y'all need to shine. One of y'all need to say, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and take this spot so we can start establishing some chemistry up front.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That is definitely fair. So we'll see if any of those guys will sort of create that separation needed to solidify their grip on the starting spot, or are we going to still be talking about this a week from now? As well as with the left guard and right tackle position, we kind of think Wilkinson and McGarry is going to be the guy, but if they go out there and play poorly, or Jermaine Ifedi or one of these other left guards, I don't even know. If Jalen Mayfield will play on Friday night, but if one of these other left guards comes out and plays well, then all of a sudden maybe that is going to be a little bit more of a competition than we thought. And how does that play out, where you're kind of shuffling in more of these, rotating three starters instead of just one position? So we'll see how that plays out. We'll talk a little bit more about the Falcons 2022 draft class, who's been relatively quiet this summer. I'll explain that a little bit later, but we'll see if get our first impressions of these guys on Friday night. But before we get there, I want to let you know that the Falcons are still favored by 1 point against the Lions on Friday night, even though I did see a stat earlier this week that the Falcons are 1-15 in the preseason games over the last 4 summers. But maybe Arthur Smith with this brand new era of Falcons football will sort of restore the winning ways, at least in the month of August. We'll see what happens in September through January. But if you want to take advantage of this Falcons being favored line, of course you can go to betonline.net, the fastest and easiest way to check in into all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online source for all your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, podcasts, they have you all covered. Head to betonline.net today and use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. So here with Jarvis Davis of the ATL Day Ones podcast on the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast feed. Let's talk a little bit about this rookie class. And I said, they've had a quiet summer. It's not to say that they haven't performed well, but usually you would expect, at least maybe the Falcons social media team has sort of changed hands and they're doing things a little bit differently. But given the expectations, the Falcons are rebuilding and it's all about the future and all these various things, you would assume that the 2022 draft class, that was earning all these A grades would be generating, daily hype. We'd be seeing highlights here of Drake London doing this and Desmond Ridder doing that. You would hear people writing and talking and about this draft class, but you're not getting that same level of hype this summer. And and that makes me very curious to see how these guys perform on Friday night. So my question to you, Jarvis, is sort of, which of these rookie players are you going to most be keyed on? I'm assuming that you're going to say Arnold Ebiketie just because of the pass rush conversation that we just had. But who among this 2022 draft class are you sort of looking forward to seeing play against the Lions?
I'm gonna go outside on advocating, right? I'm gonna start with Troy Andersen, man, because I've been to several practices. I've been out there trying to find any and everything that I can see and try to get a good gauge on some of these guys. And I think he's the guy that I'm kind of like, all right, I've been out there several times, and I kind of understand what it is, to be a linebacker, and to be what to look for, what kind of thing attributes you like to have in a linebacker, and I think that I haven't really had a chance to see what it is because I'll never forget when somebody, and I ain't really think about it till somebody actually asked me on Twitter. They were like, "Hey, what do you think about Troy Andersen?" I was like, "Hey, I don't know." You know what I'm saying? Because he just hasn't flashed. He just hasn't really. I really haven't even seen anything, and that may explain why when the Falcons released their depth chart this week. I'm sure you talked about it. He's under one of the reserve spots. Like he's on the back end of the all of the rotation seemingly. So I think that's the first thing that comes to mind is Troy Andersen, and you really want to see why the Falcons drafted him. And the same thing goes with Arnold Ebiketie as well. Why did the Falcons draft him? I know, because their pass rushes was anemic or has been anemic for the past how many years or whatever years. I think that, but you want to be able to say, okay, now I see why the Falcons drafted him by him either getting the tackle for loss or maybe putting a quarterback on the ground in a real game. Those are some of the things that fans want to see. I know I want to see that as well. So those are the first couple of guys that come to mind when you think about like, all right, out of this rookie class, you want to see what those guys can do. And Drake London as well. Like you want to see why they took this guy with 8th overall pick. And I think that he was a guy that was on the back end of the depth chart as well. I'm like, all right, so I don't know if it's a situation where they haven't seen what they needed to see in order for them to at least put them in by second. At least on the Ebiketie was right behind Audio Condacia. Okay, all right, cool. He's gonna be in a rotation, but Drake London, it was dang near at the bottom of that bad boy. He was in a reserve spot as well. So I think those are the three guys that kind of come to jump to mind first when you think about like, all right, out of this 2022 NFL draft, these are the guys that I want to see something from, man.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off that. I want to see Desmond Ridder. I don't have these super high expectations that Desmond Ritter is going to be this franchise-saving quarterback. I think he does have the potential to be a good quarterback here in Atlanta, and I want to see if we get to see some flashes of that against the Lions. I want to see, you talk about the pass rush and Arnold Ebiketie. We have these high expectations for him, given the Falcons trading up for him and a lot of people seeing him as a first round talent. But then you also want to see what D'Angelo Malone can do, because if he can hit, in addition to Arnold Ebiketie hitting, that puts the Falcons in a very, very good spot, moving forward to continue to build this pass rush. And then Tyler Algier. We know Arthur Smith wants to, establish the run and beat his balanced offense. And it looks like all eyes are going to be on Tyler Algier to be the workhorse if the Falcons are going to have a strong running game. So you want to kind of see what he can do now that people are actually going to be tackling him, which was not necessarily the case in these practices. And then of course, John Fitzpatrick and Justin Schaefer, we'll see what those guys could do. But I don't think anybody has super high expectations for those guys. But, you got to have role players as well. So we'll see what they can do. But Jarvis, I'm curious, is there an undrafted free agent that you're sort of curious to see what that person can do?
I would have to go with Kwani Dang. Dude, 6'6", probably about 245, 250. He's a edge rusher type guy as well. So just super long. He just stands out. Like you walk into a room, like, oh, okay, you play some type of sports. Like what sport do you play? Like he is a super long guy. He's kind of been showing some things like they're out there when I've been out at practice. Checking those guys out in one-on-one drills. My favorite part of practice ever. I get really satisfied by watching that. But I think that Kwani Dang is a guy that, like, hey, this is a guy you want to keep your eye on as well. When it comes to what you want to see from this class, because we know that the Falcons have had some success of getting those undrafted guys and late round guys. They had a guy Justin. I was about to say Stephen Nicholas, but Foye Oluokun, who was drafted late, in the sixth round. A guy who played safety coming out of college, and you just think about going from that to being able to go hit the free agent market and make too much money that your team that found you when they even attempt to sign you. So what, $14-15 million down with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So those are some of the things that you would love to see from this new regime.
Yeah. I'm curious about some of these defensive linemen that are undrafted free agents, like Derek Tangelo and Timmy Horn. We know that the depth
Tangelo has
on
been shining. He's been flashing. Like
Yeah.
he piqued my interest a lot. That's a good name. I like Tangelo too.
Yeah, because we know that the depth on the D line is pretty thin, and the Falcons haven't been in any hurry to go out there and replace someone like an Eddie Goldman with sort of a veteran player, and you wonder, okay, is it because they see something with some of these undrafted free agents that could make the team? And you've seen flashes and you've heard flashes from these guys in practice, and now you want to see how it applies to the game. And then the other group, I kind of want to see these back end wide receivers, right? I'm not expecting any of these guys to make the roster, but I've heard buzz about Jared Bernhardt and Stanley Berryhill and these guys. And so, we know that the Falcons don't have the strongest group of wide receivers in the NFL. So if you can develop, one of these guys on the practice squad for a year or two, and that guy can be, a contributor down the road, that certainly will sort of boost that passing game in the future. So those are some of the undrafted free agents that I'm going to be keyed on. But we'll get our first glimpses of the rookie class on Friday night against the Lions. But we're also kind of putting a lot of expectations on previous draft classes and some of the big name players from that we haven't quite seen live up to the hype. Not Kyle Pitts has lived up to the hype, but what about some of these other 2021 draft picks like Richie Grant and some of these 2020 guys like Michael Walker and Jalen Hawkins and Marlon Davidson? And I'll get Jarvis's thoughts on which of those guys from those two draft classes he's expecting big things out of this season, and if we'll see that beginning on Friday night against the Lions. But before we get there, guys, I do want to plug the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family, where you get 3 shows with 4 hosts breaking down local sports, national sports. That's A to Z with Mark Zinno, Hitting Hard with John Chuckery, and ATL Day Ones with Tanitra Batiste, and of course Jarvis Davis, who I'm talking to right now. And Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast feed is also the home of the Locked On Braves postcast, which you can check out on YouTube on Locked On Sports Atlanta. And you will also be able to check out the Locked On Falcons postcast where Jarvis and I will be breaking down Falcons wins, losses, and maybe even a couple of ties this season, where
Right.
we will give you the lowdown on all the things you need to see. And of course, we'll be coming at you Friday night after the game. You can check out the video version of that on the Locked On Sports Atlanta YouTube channel, and then you'll get the audio version of that on the Locked On Falcons audio various podcast platforms. So go subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on your preferred podcast feed. So wrapping up today's episode here with Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta, and sort of talked about, some of these second and third year guys that, you expect. We talked about the rookie class, and, rookies
Right.
tend to struggle. They have their ups and downs, but you kind of, from year one to year two, that's a big jump. Year two to year three, where you have some of these guys that were struggling as rookies, but now it either clicks or it doesn't for a
Right.
lot of these guys. And so, which of from these two draft classes from 2020 and 2021, a lot of these guys haven't really made big contributions in Atlanta these last couple of years, and that's been a contributing factor to why the Falcons haven't had the level of success that they want to have. But anybody in these two draft classes that really stand out to you that you're hoping to see big things from, not only this season but also on Friday night against the Lions?
You know what? The first guy that comes to mind to me is definitely Jalen Hawkins, and I'll go ahead and put these two guys in the same category. I put Jalen Hawkins and Michael Walker in the same category, because I believe those guys are bound to break out. And because you just from with Jalen, he's a guy that can be that ball hawk, no pun intended, for you, that you need. Because when you talk about a defense that it's hard to stop people, you can't rush the passer, and it's hard to stop the run, and teams are just pretty much going out there and just scrimmaging against you, on Sundays, and just everything is working for them. The office coordinator just back there having a good old time. You need somebody that can take the ball away, right? And I think that Jalen Hawkins is that type of guy. And when you just look at him, how comfortable he is out there, the guy has started taking over a leadership role. And there was an instance out there where he and Michael Walker were talking about a play that just happened on the field, on the sidelines, and you could just really see that he has a really good understanding what Dean Pease wants from him and what he expects from the entire defense as a whole. And I think that, Michael Walker is a guy who actually just been chomping at the bit to get his opportunity to be out there, to go out there and shine, right? Because, for he unfortunately for him, he's played a position that, Deion Jones has held down for quite some time. And I think that, with him, Deion Jones out of the picture, still on the pup list, kind of chilling, nobody talk about him anymore. I think Michael Walker sees an opportunity to prove that, hey, I belong here. I'm the type linebacker that you're looking for, and you don't have to go out and go get a Roquan Smith, because I have you covered as far as what you exactly what you need from a linebacker spot.
Yeah, I think so. I think those are two good picks. I'll talk Richie Grant. Had a lot of expectations for Richie Grant coming in last year,
Yes,
being that
indeed.
starter, being that difference maker in the secondary, and then basically didn't see him for half the season until there were injuries, and then he was kind of forced to play out of position and kind of held his own, did some good things, but there were some ups and downs, and now you're hoping that now he's going to be playing his natural position. It's going to be like a round peg in a round hole, where he can
Right.
go out there and be that playmaker that we all envisioned he could be in that secondary alongside a guy like Jalen Hawkins. So I'm curious to see what he can do. And then, you got some of those day three defensive linemen from last year, like Ade Ogundeji and Taquan Graham, that, when we drafted him, it's like, okay, they can be role players. They can be some rotational guys, but, it looks like Taquan Graham is going to be expected to be a starter for this team, unless they can go out there and get another, defensive end or defensive lineman between now and the start of the season. And Ade Ogundeji, guy that, could be in the starting lineup in large part due to his value as a run defender. But you want to see if that pass rush is a little bit improved. He had one sack last year, didn't have a ton of pressure last year, getting a lot of exposure, given Dante Fowler's injuries last year, and he was kind of forced into the lineup seemingly before he was ready. And now, is he ready to take on such a big role? Especially given that we're talking about Ebiketie and Malone, rookies that you don't necessarily know if those guys going to be big time contributors right away in the NFL. Although, as we discussed, we're hoping for that. But yeah, those are two guys that I'm curious from last year's draft class, sort of what year one to year two jumps those guys can make. But Jarvis, my last question for you is sort of put it all together, like to the listeners and viewers, what should they be expecting Friday night against the Lions?
I think that the game plan is for Arthur Smith. As I have stood outside that meeting room and with my a cup to the door, trying to figure out what the game plan is on Friday night against the Detroit Lions. No, I didn't really do that. For those who really believe me, but here's the thing: I think that they want to go out and establish. We've kind of touched on it throughout the show. Arthur Smith wants to run the football. Look where he came from. He got this job because he was established an identity on offense, and that's like, we're gonna run the ball down the throats. We're gonna do a little play action, and we're gonna find out. We're gonna hit these big plays downfield when the opportunity comes, and the opportunity is only gonna come because of the success that we've had running the football. So I think that look for that offense with like establishing the run, looking at what Drew Dahlman and or Matt Hennessy are going to be able to do. Can they get some movement? Can they be solid? Can they just be solid? Like, can you be okay? So you just stay in front of the man. Don't let him beat you clean. Just stay in front of him. If he puts you on your back, just let him go so you don't get the flag call, right? And Tyler Algier or Cordell Patterson, whoever at the running back position, say, okay, I know he didn't get whooped, but I know I'm going to go this way because ain't nothing going on right here. Ain't nothing popping off right here. So I think that establishing the run and then defensively, Dean Pease is fired up, man. Like, I can see Dean Pease at least lining up for one snap on 3rd and long and doing something. I don't know what position he played if he played, when he played football. I don't know what position he played, but I know that if he was to go out there based off of the words and that been coming out of his mouth, he is super, super fired up about trying to prove people wrong. Because, at the end of the day, like, I'm tired of talking about the Falcons defense. I'm tired of talking about them not being able to rush the passer, not being able to turn teams over, not being in the top half, not even talking about top 10, top 5. I'm talking about being the top half, not being in the bottom rung of defenses year in and year out. I know you're tired of that junk. People who've been around for several years at the Falcons organization, I'll get tired of it too. So I think you can expect for the offense to try to establish the run and hit some big plays downfield from time to time when the opportunity comes. And then defensively, put some pressure on the quarterback, man. Let the other quarterback know that, dang, I just played the Falcons, man. Those guys out there running the ball, doggone killing our offensive line. We might need to rethink some of these things. Now that Detroit offensive line is pretty doggone good, but we'll see. We'll see. I think that's the plan going in. We'll definitely find out whether or not they're able to execute that bad boy, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah, people just want something to get excited about, right? That's basically what it is.
Do something to make me feel good. From a classic movie.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll leave it at that. Jarvis, really appreciate you joining me talking about this game. Look forward to talking to you after the game to see if the Falcons lived up to these expectations. Of course, obviously, you guys can check that out on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube so you can catch that live. And then, of course, you can check it out, the audio version, if you miss it, on Locked On Falcons later on Friday or Saturday morning, whenever that drops. But Jarvis, go ahead and plug Locked On Sports Atlanta, what you, Tanitra, Mark, and John are up to.
No doubt about it. We are, Locked On Sports Atlanta. Make sure you go follow us on Twitter at Locked On ATL. We are trying to build it up. So come on and help us out. We really appreciate you. We appreciate all the people that have been liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Obviously, we talk about Atlanta sports each and every day. Whatever you think is going on in the city of Atlanta from a sports standpoint, we got you covered right there. 3 shows, 4 people doing it, and we love sports. So yeah, go ahead and check us out at Locked On ATL on Twitter, and you can follow myself at Jarvis D90.
Yeah, we'll see if the Falcons can steal some attention away from the Braves, right?
Well, yeah, let's not get ahead of ourselves here, Aaron. We're trying to build up. We're trying to build up to it, man. Like it's
Okay,
not gonna
all
happen
right,
in
all
one
right,
day.
all right. Yeah. Maybe I need to pump the brakes. You're right.
Just a little bit.
Guys, I really do appreciate you tuning in for another episode. Of course, always thank you guys for making Locked On Falcons your first listen. Check out Locked On Sports Atlanta as your second listen, or Locked On Braves, Locked On Hawks, Locked On Bulldogs, and of course, also check out Locked On NFL or Locked On Fantasy Football if you guys want to get geared up for this upcoming fantasy football season. Get prepped for your draft. Locked On Fantasy Football is hosted by Vinny Iyer, who has 20 years of NFL expertise and experience to help you guys get ready for this upcoming fantasy football season. So go check out Locked On Fantasy Football on your preferred podcast platform, all the same ones that you can check out Locked On Falcons and Locked On Sports Atlanta, including on YouTube.